So we want to talk about the Sacramento Kings because they've definitely had a interesting history, to say the least. They've been, they've been consistently the bottom of the Western Conference, always up there in contention for the number one pick. Most notably, they picked DeMarcus Cousins, and DeMarcus Cousins was always a awesome talent. He was one of the best big men in the league. He could shoot. He had touch. Could play bully ball down low. There's really not too many players in that league who could compete with Kirk Cousins. DeMarcus. Sorry, we were just talking about football for 2 hours before this. Who can compete with DeMarcus Cousins just down on the block. He would almost have them almost in the playoffs, but they never made it. Mm-hmm. And then it started to be like, okay, it's not working with DeMarcus Cousins. We haven't been able to put a really good team around him. There was one year they had Rajon Rondo. That was a disaster. And then he was kind of always in the trade conversations where it's like, are the Celtics going to trade for DeMarcus Cousins? He's on the trade block. And then All-Star break, 2018, I believe, they trade DeMarcus Cousins to the New Orleans Pelicans. And then he goes on to help them get to the second round of the playoffs. You have Drew Holiday, Rajon Rondo on that team, Anthony Davis. So he goes, thrives on the Pelicans, bounces around the league. Then the Kings, still perpetually bad. 2019, they take De'Aaron Fox.
2017. He was the pick after Tatum.
So then they take De'Aaron Fox and they bring Buddy Hield. They almost make the playoffs one year, and then they just fall out of it. So it's like from then on, Kings were sent back to the bottom. And then last year, they trade Buddy Hield to the Indiana Pacers, acquired Domantas Sabonis, one of the most underrated players in the NBA. And now this year, new head coach after firing Luke Walton. So the Kings hired Luke Walton after he led the Warriors to, I believe, what was the record? They only had two losses after Steve Kerr took over because he was dealing with health issues. Anyone could have coached the Warriors that year, though. So it's like credit to Luke Walton for like steadying the ship, but like anyone could have coached the Warriors that year. He gets a job because of that. Goes to the Kings. Completely awful. Kind of a Josh McDaniels situation.
Also coached the Lakers in that time, too.
Talks about
the Lakers' dysfunction. The thing with the Kings, especially the last 15 years, has been their inability to draft and picking the wrong guy. Mm-hmm. And it goes it goes back really far. But if you go back to, we'll start in 2009, because 2009, they have the 4th overall pick. They need a point guard, and they draft Tyreke Evans. And Tyreke Evans played very well for the first few seasons, but
not as good as Steph.
3 picks later, it was Steph Curry, all-time great point guard.
Maybe the best in history.
Potentially, if you had played your cards right, you could have had Steph Curry, DeMarcus Cousins, Hassan Whiteside all together on the same team, but you didn't. And then very next year, after you draft DeMarcus Cousins, you drafted Bismack Biyombo, but that turns into Jimmer Fredette.
Yeah.
And in that same draft, Klay Thompson.
Yeah. And Jimmer Fredette, maybe the greatest player of all time in China. Not the NBA, though. Klay Thompson, definitely a huge whiff on the Kings' part, taking Jimmer Fredette over Klay. That's wild to think about.
They also had a chance at Kemba Walker, too.
Yeah, Kemba Walker even would have been much better than Jimmer Fredette.
Yeah, and then even Bismack Biyombo, who by no means is like a top-level talent, he was still a decent role player, and they traded him to the Hornets, and in return they got Jimmer Fredette, which did not do them any favors. He ended up scoring 6 points a game and was out of the league pretty quickly. 2012, they had Thomas Robinson.
Yeah,
with
bust out of Kansas.
Ben McLemore turned into a role player.
Yeah, dunk guy, I guess. He was in the dunk contest, but wasn't a good basketball player.
I'll give him credit. 2013 was a bad year overall. Yeah. I mean, a couple I think
that was the Victor Oladipo draft, right?
That was the Victor Oladipo draft. That was the Giannis draft. There really wasn't a lot of key players in that, so no disrespect there. 2014,
Willie Cauley-Stein.
Nick Stock is Willie Cauley-Stein. If we look at the 2015 draft, I mean, there was definitely better players taken in that draft. Marquise Chris, who they ended up just trading away to the Suns.
Done nothing.
Has done absolutely nothing. And the Willie Cauley-Stein draft, he was taken 6th overall. Later in that draft, there was Miles Turner. There was Terry Rozier. There was Devin Booker.
Even Kelly Oubre is better.
Yeah, exactly. And they have done it. Frank Kaminsky has been okay.
Yeah.
The most recent fumbles, though, De'Aaron Fox has been balling. De'Aaron Fox, I like him a lot. But 2018, they had a chance at this foreign superstar in Luka Doncic, and they drafted Marvin Bagley. And that has not aged well for them. It went DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley, Luka Doncic.
That's awful.
That's really bad.
Yeah. Oh, you also could have, I don't know, Trae Young.
Could have had Trae Young.
Yeah.
But no, couldn't get Trae Young.